We were there for a logic and accuracy test in Washington County.
The point of doing this early is so if a problem does come up, we can correct it.
Members of the public allowed to ask questions to quell any of their concerns.
Can you describe the setup here?
A routine test now under the public microscope. Plus, how would each candidate for Oregon governor handle climate change if elected? Responses from two of the candidates have quite a few similarities. We're breaking down their plans. And finally, the Portland Thorns are playing for the National Women's Soccer League Championship tomorrow, so we're heading into the KGW Vault to look back at the history of excellence in the playoffs from the ladies representing Soccer City, USA. Here's the story. I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We're starting today in front of Washington County elections because they've performed what's called their first public logic and accuracy test on their vote counting machines. I gotta tell you, it sounds like it's a boring thing, and it kind of is. In fact, I've never even covered one before. But these days, questions of election security are on the front of all of our minds, and we just had to check it out. Let's go inside. The accuracy and logic test will be run 3 times for the public here in Washington County. It's the way they confirm the machines will accurately count every single choice that the county's 385,000 registered voters make this election.
The point of doing this early is so if a problem does come up, we can correct it.
That's Dan Forrester. He's the elections manager here. The media have turned out in full force for this event.
I would say that there's a greater level of interest in the mechanics of how we run elections this year.
Also here, nearly a dozen people, members of the public who want to observe the test run of the sample ballots and ask questions about election security. By the way, the machines performed perfectly on the tests that I reviewed. Most observers would only tell me their first name. Janice wonders about the laptops that sit on top of the ballot scanning machines and hold the vote totals from each stack of ballots that are run through.
So I see 3 cords connected here, and I know that we've been told it's not connected to the internet.
That's right.
So the what looks like an Ethernet cord, that's to your internal?
Yeah, that's going to our internal server, and that network is not connected to the internet.
Dan, the elections manager, stressed several times that the laptops are not connected to the internet. He said they cannot be hacked from the outside because no one can get to them. Still, Janice wonders.
At night, when everything's shut down, what happens to them? Do they stay attached to the computers and are they logged out and you have to have a password to get in? So are these laptops are owned by Washington County? Okay. And can I ask the question, is it possible to find out the specs on the computer that were purchased? I mean, were they purchased without a modem, for example, to get to her question?
Dan said he would connect with Janice after the morning session and help her get the computer specs. I think all the questions I heard this morning were interesting and valid, and this process is valuable. It not only proves the machines are extremely accurate, it also helps kill false rumors.
The observers are asking great questions. These are the kinds of things that we think about, and it's just great to have the opportunity to, share how elections really work and dispel some of the rumors and misinformation around elections.
Ann White is another observer. She's a Washington County precinct person, and her earrings give away that she's a Republican. This is her first time as an observer. She wonders if each ballot is running through all the vote counting machines so that different information is picked off each one.
Okay, so this machine just counted 200 ballots. This machine counted 200 ballots. They don't count all the same ballots. They just all do separate counts. So do those ballots each go to each machine?
Dan answers no. The ballot only runs through one machine. There are multiple machines, so a large number of ballots can all be counted at the same time. Melody is another person here to watch. She wants to know what sort of security is in place when the vote totals are put onto a thumb drive and walked into a different room to share with the public.
Yeah, and is that monitored? Are there 2 people that walk the USB drive over there?
It's not required that there are 2 people.
Because, when you're working in the bank vault, they always like to have redundancy.
Dan answers that no, there is no redundancy there, and since the results fed out on election night are unofficial, he does not think a second person is needed there. But he said there are many redundancies elsewhere to keep the election secure and safe. And the point he stressed time and again, the counting machines and the laptops which hold their results are cut off from the outside world.
And one thing that I like to remind people is that the tabulation system is closed, it's separate, it's not connected to the internet. We have a number of layers of security to protect us against malicious intrusion.
And I have to say, now that I've seen the process, I take back what I said earlier. It's not boring at all. It's actually fascinating to learn about the nitty-gritty of how our votes are counted and how those machines are protected. Washington County is going to run the test again November 2nd at 9 a.m. You should go if you get a chance. And if you live somewhere else, call your local county elections office to find out when they are running the next public test in your area. And then let me know how it went. What are your other concerns about election security? Let us know. Send an email. You can send it to thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. With a week and a half until ballots are due, we're checking in on where each of the women running to be Oregon's next governor stand on environmental issues. First, though, a disclaimer. We know there are many other issues on your mind this election season. A survey from the Oregon Values and Belief Center released Thursday found that climate change actually came in 6th on voters' priorities, behind homelessness, housing, affordability, crime, drugs, and inflation. So yes, those things are crucial issues coming up on this election day. But we still thought it was important for voters to know where each of the candidates stand on environmental topics. Scientists have been very clear. We have a pretty short window to act on climate change before some of the worst impacts are locked in, and we're smack dab in the middle of that time window right now. So the policies enacted or repealed by our next governor will really have big consequences for years, if not decades, to come. Environmental reporter Cale Williams joins me now. Cale, walk us through your process of asking these questions and then getting the answers back.
Sure. So we sent each of the candidates a short questionnaire, just 6 questions, about 2 weeks ago on October 17th. We gave each of them a week to respond. Republican candidate Christine Drazen and Democrat Tina Kotek both got back to us earlier this week. Unaffiliated candidate Betsy Johnson's campaign director, she said the candidate wouldn't have time to answer the questionnaire and instead pointed us to Johnson's website where, quote, all of Betsy's positions on climate change and the environment are readily available.
Oh, you gotta love that, said no one ever. But so now that you've heard back from the folks who did want to respond, what was the takeaway?
Well, we'll start with some of the similarities between all 3 of the candidates. Johnson, Kotek, and Drazen, they all acknowledge the threats posed by climate change, and they all agree the state needs to cut its carbon emissions. The similarities don't stop there, at least between Johnson and Drazen. Kotek's approach differs greatly from her 2 opponents, but we'll get to her in just a minute. Both Drazen and Johnson said they would do away with Governor Kate Brown's executive order on climate, and that put a limit on emissions from utilities and industry, and that limit gradually declines over time. The executive order would drive up fuel costs, according to both Johnson and Drazen, and it would disproportionately harm rural and blue-collar Oregonians.
So if both Drazen and Johnson say they want to repeal the state's signature policy on climate change, but they also want to lower emissions, how are they going to do that?
Well, I asked Drazen what she'd replace Brown's executive order with, and here's what she said. I'll replace it with a commitment to work with businesses and legislative leaders to continue to balance opportunities to support a low-carbon future with the needs of Oregonians in all corners of our state. And in response to another question about how she weighs those trade-offs when environmental policy can benefit one constituency and potentially harm another, Drazen had this to say. I'm not supportive of policies that drive up the cost of living while providing little in the way of tangible environmental benefits. I will not advance a climate agenda that risks exacerbating Oregon's affordability crisis.
Although that doesn't really spell out how she would lower emissions. Did she or Johnson address that specifically?
You know, their answers were a little surprising to me. Both Johnson and Drazen have emphasized tamping down on wildfires as a key part of their plans to lower carbon emissions. This is from Johnson's website. The thing that Oregon can do to most reduce our carbon footprint is to better manage our forests, which are burning uncontrollably every year as we fail to do anything about the devastating impacts on our economy, our communities, and the environment. And so Johnson said she would put state foresters to work thinning trees on areas owned by the state and would demand the federal government do the same on federal forests, which account for about 60% of the wilderness in Oregon. For her part, Drazen said she would look to promote innovation in green technologies by reinstating a tax credit for research and development.
Interesting. And according to state regulators, the biggest source of greenhouse emission in Oregon is the transportation sector. Either candidates address that?
Sort of. You know, when I asked Drazen about that, she said she would support low carbon transportation options and would try to reduce commute times by adding lanes to freeways. Now, that type of thing would probably face staunch opposition from environmental groups who say adding freeway capacity will just invite more drivers to the road.
And what about Kotek?
So, no surprise here, her approach would be very different from her two opponents. One of her top priorities, she told us, would be to, quote, protect the progress we've made. And that means keeping Kate Brown's executive order in place. When we asked Kotek how she would balance the benefits of reduced emissions with the cost of higher fuel prices, she had this to say: I am committed to transitioning to a clean energy economy, one that provides clean, renewable energy, grows jobs, especially in rural Oregon, and helps fight the effects of climate change. There's no doubt that our gas prices are too high right now, but let's talk about why. Corporate polluters like oil and gas companies are taking in record profits while they increase prices at the pump for working families. And Kotek emphasized that she doesn't see climate policy as an either-or proposition, either cutting carbon emissions or keeping the economy on solid footing. Here's what she said. As governor, I will be focused on ensuring our transition to a clean energy future also brings targeted investments in good-paying jobs. So, of course, we couldn't fit all of their answers into one TV segment, so we've gone ahead and posted their full responses, plus the questions we asked them, on KGW.com.
That's great stuff. I hope people go check it out. You should watch it, listen to it. Kale's the man. Thanks, Kale.
Thank you.
Republican Joe Kent and Democrat Marie Gluesenkamp Perez are both running to represent Southwest Washington, and they could not be more opposite.
I don't view that as an abortion. Doctors have to make triage
So who's
time
going
all
to
the time.
decide when the life of the mother is at risk?
Doctors
So
decide that.
some 20-year-old staffer working for Mitch McConnell. That's your plan.
No, it's a doctor.
We're going to get into some of this election's biggest issues with them just ahead when the story returns. If you're not watching our weekly show, Straight Talk with Laurel Porter, you are really missing out. It's long-form discussions about important issues, and right now we're talking to candidates running for office. This week is especially timely. We're hearing from candidates for Southwest Washington's 3rd Congressional District, Republican Joe Kent and Democrat Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez. Kent has been in the headlines all week after the Daily Beast raised questions about the company he works for. He answered questions about that, and you can listen to the full conversation tonight at 7. But we wanted to take on some different issues tonight. First, their views on abortion access. Then you'll hear about them talking about voting by mail and gun laws.
Do you want to see the Washington right to abortion overturned in Washington state?
I'm running for a federal position, so yes, I would. I mean, if I was running for state house or for governor, that would be my position.
And you would like to see a federal ban on abortion. Would you vote for that in Congress if it comes up?
The problem is with a federal ban in Congress right now in a post-Roe era is that the courts would throw it out. The courts, the courts have ruled that it needs to go back to the states, and so Joe, I'm okay if it be in the states. But
okay. You did tell me though that you would vote for a federal ban.
For a federal ban on abortion, it would be kind of a waste of time at this point.
But you would vote for one. Are you saying you wouldn't vote for one?
It would just to bring it to the floor would probably be,
so is that a no vote?
A waste of time.
Can I say that's a no vote for you?
If it comes up, if there's a chance to fight for life, I'm going to fight for life.
So you'd vote for yes. Would you have any exceptions for incest, rape, or the life of a mother?
Life of the mother, absolutely, always. I mean, look, I don't think having to triage when the mother is in crisis, I don't view that as an abortion. Doctors have to make triage.
So who's going to decide when the life of the mother is at risk?
Doctors
decide. Some 20-year-old staffer working for Mitch McConnell. That's your plan.
No, it's a doctor.
It's having somebody show up and say, prove that your miscarriage was really, an accident, that it wasn't your fault, that you didn't do something. You want the sheriffs showing up at someone's door.
No one's talking about that. No one's talking about sheriffs. That's just
how
ridiculous
else would this be
tactics.
implemented, Joe?
No.
How else would this be implemented? And the thing is, Laurel, is that what women want in Washington state does not matter to Joe. We have been very clear about our values in Washington state, and that's not what's important to him.
And that's where the states' rights issues come in. Roe is the law of the land. Roe has been struck down, sent back to the states. Now, look, abortion is a hot topic, and I understand this, and I'm pro-life. I believe life begins at conception. The Democrats right now, and Marie's stance of not limiting abortion, no limits on abortion up to the 9th month.
Do you support any limits on abortion?
No, because
up to 9 months. We can terminate a pregnancy at 9 months.
You can't say what's going on. What federal bill is going to address all of the nuance of what could be going on in any of those pregnancies? That doesn't exist.
But there are people who say your view is extreme, that you support abortion all the way.
There are cases when a 9-month abortion would be very, very extreme. Nobody wants that. That's not something that is a tragedy when that's a necessity.
Let me ask you a little bit more about vote by mail, because Republican secretaries of state in Washington have said it's safe and secure. It's very popular in Washington. Most people want to keep vote by mail, but do you want to see it abolished?
I do. I want us to go back to voting in person with an ID at a precinct where the precinct rosters are scrubbed. The ID indicates if you're an eligible voter. And then we don't even use machines. We count the ballots with observers from every single side. And if there's discrepancies, we adjudicate them right there. It's a transparent process.
Okay, one more topic before we get to just a few fun questions about Second Amendment guns. You both support the Second Amendment. Marie, you've said that you would support some common ground, trying to find common ground to try to reduce gun violence. We're seeing record gun violence in Portland again and many other cities. What are you supporting to some common sense measures you think would help?
Well, I think that when we look around, we see that kids are not as old as they used to be. That there's just a lack of whatever the cause is. One of the solutions that we can do to address rising violence is to increase the age at which young people can purchase what are known as assault weapons from 18, what it's currently, to 21.
And that's the extent of what you would do. What do you think? Any safety measures you support?
So Marie thinks that you're good enough to go serve your country with a weapon, go fight and die overseas, but when you come back, if you're not old enough to buy a beer, if you're not 21 years old, then you don't get to have the same assault rifles that she brags herself about having. This is the exact reason why we have the Second Amendment, is to prevent government from becoming tyrannical. So we don't need any more laws on the books about guns. There's already far too many. What we need to do is enforce actual law and order, and we need to make sure that people have their Second Amendment not infringed whatsoever. It's one thing to say that you support the Second Amendment, but then you say, but I want restrictions on these people over here. Well, then who's next? Who's the next group that's in power?
Is it true? Would you really believe we should have machine guns?
The Second Amendment, as written, shall not be infringed. I think that the American people should have the exact same weapons that our military has. The reason why we have a Second Amendment is to keep a tyrannical government off our back. Look at the post-COVID world. We would be like Canada or we'd be like Australia right now if we didn't have our Second Amendment. The only check that we have from our government having a complete and total monopoly on violence and on power is our Second Amendment.
Lots of interesting stuff there. No matter which side you're on, it's fascinating to watch, and you should watch it. Full episode tonight, 7 p.m. right here on KGW. You can check out about 15 minutes of bonus conversation with more questions to the candidates on our KGW YouTube page. Still to come on the story, the Portland Thorns are playing for the National Women's Soccer League Championship tomorrow, and we're heading into the KGW Vault tonight to look at their previous championship successes and how playing for the title away from Providence Park could actually be a good thing. We'll explain when the story returns. Tomorrow's a huge day for our hometown Thorns. They'll be in Washington, D.C., playing in the National Women's Soccer League Championship against the Kansas City Current. The match starts at 5 o'clock our time, and it's airing on that other station, CBS. In honor of the players, we thought this would be a good chance to head into the KGW Vault for a look at their previous successes and how playing on the road for a title could actually be a pretty good thing. Staying with this year's team for a moment, following their win in the semifinal match at Providence Park last weekend, the Thorns became the first team in league history to qualify for 4 NWSL championship games. Now to the Vault. The Thorns' first appearance in 2013, the inaugural year for the National Women's Soccer League. They took on the Western New York Flash on the road and sealed the deal in stoppage time.
Morgan near side. Oh, she's got Sinclair on a run. Christine Sinclair trying to put it away. Sinclair scores! Christine Sinclair giving Portland a 2-0 advantage, and that just might seal the first National Women's Soccer League title.
Yes. The Thorns' next championship came in 2017 against the North Carolina Courage, the successors to the Western New York Flash. The game featured just one goal, and it went the way of the Thorns. On the road, once again, the Thorns took down the Courage.
The crowd in a frenzy behind the goal, and there it is! The Portland Thorns win the NWSL Championship!
The following year, 2018, saw a championship rematch between the Thorns and the Courage, but this time the game was held here in Portland at Providence Park. The Thorns were underdogs, having lost to North Carolina 3 times during the regular season. And in front of a sellout crowd here at home, the Thorns came up short, losing 3-0.
The North Carolina Courage, your 2018 NWSL champions.
And now the Thorns have a chance to once again rise to the top of the NWSL in their championship match tomorrow. As we saw, playing for the title away from Providence Park has proven to be a pretty good thing for the team. So the fact that they're across the country in D.C. could really be a great omen. Another good omen is the fact that Portland boasts the league's most valuable player this year, 22-year-old Sophia Smith. She's the youngest player in league history to win that award and just the second Portland Thorns player named MVP. Smith scored a club record 14 goals this season to go along with 3 assists in 18 matches. The #1 pick of the 2020 draft, living up to expectations and then some.
It still really hasn't hit me, but it's an honor because I know I was with great company who are up for that award, and I think there's so many other players in this league that can also win MVP, but it just goes to show a lot about my teammates. They push me to be better every single day, and they allow me to be myself.
Very nice. Tomorrow's championship game airs at 5 o'clock Pacific time over on CBS. Good luck, ladies. Go Thorns. All right, keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. We'll finish things up right after this. For our Hey Help profile this week, we're talking about the KGW Great Toy Drive. Last year, with your help, we donated over 30,000 toys to local kids. This year, we're raising the bar. Head to kgw.com/toy to sign up. We'll send a collection kit, and you can help collect toys for local families. And a special shout out tonight to Sherwood Ice Arena for being one of the very first to sign up. Well done. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. Remember, the story, our story, well, that never ends. I'll see you on Monday.